The Fujicast is an independent Loading Zone production.
There's a few references today, Kev, to listening to the show today, being the 11th. One of them is Armistice, and the other one is, of course, is it's that week.
What?
When's
Brexit?
No, not that week.
Oh.
No, that was that's still to come. No, it's that week of the X Weddings conference.
Are you sure it's
Did
this
you
week?
forget?
Is it this week?
Yes, it
Oh
is.
my God, better organise that, I suppose. Yeah.
So
Need to make some phone calls.
let me ask you: can people, book the venue? Yeah. Can people still buy tickets? I know we have 48 hours running here. If you're listening on Monday, the 11th, that is.
Yeah. Yes, there is technically. Yeah, I mean we've sold the amount that we needed to sell to make it worthwhile, which is great. So thank you very much to everybody that has purchased a ticket.
Yep.
And there's still, because we've moved to the Apex Hotel from the Hilton, so the room we're in actually holds a lot more. So yeah, technically you can still pop along and buy a ticket if you so wish to x-weddings.co.uk. For everybody else, I'm very much looking forward to seeing them on Tuesday evening or Wednesday morning.
It's like he's reading this out, isn't it?
And this is what Gemma told me to say. She said, don't...
She said, mention it.
Yeah, she said, be nice.
Oh, did she?
Smile when you speak.
Okay. Don't waste up those smiles.
Yeah. Well, it's early in the month, isn't it? So I've got a good allowance now.
It's a hideous, unashamed mention of the masterclass thing on the Thursday as well, but I've still got some spaces if you want to come and learn about photo films and find out how sound and video, top photography, is helping during Brexit.
Yes. Well, I'm going to that. I'm going to go into that one.
Are you?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm really looking forward to it and stuff.
I am really looking forward to it.
The Fujicast.
You need some presentation training. Talking of which, by the way, somebody said to me the other day, and I don't know if we have any vicars listening. I'm sure we don't. Do we? No. A couple came in the other day to talk about their wedding that they're having next month. And we were doing the pre-wedding chat, and they were talking about, or the groom in particular was talking about the vicar. He said, "Do you know what they could really do with some presentation training? Just to lighten them up a bit." Is that unfair? I always find priests sometimes easier than Church of England vicars.
Yeah,
in terms of welcome, their welcoming sort of manner to you.
Yeah.
No,
I'm pretty ambivalent about it, really.
I can tell. Is this going to be a show of ambivalence today?
Yeah.
Coming up, your questions.
I'm going, and I'm not saying goodbye.
No, don't start. The X Pro 3 screen, we're going to talk about that. Best settings for video compression, just some of the stuff we're going to be talking about with the XT3 on that one. If your question's not on the show this week, do not fret. Sometimes it takes days, sometimes weeks, sometimes a smidge more. But you can't rush perfection, can you? Send your questions to click@fujicast.co.uk. Today we'll hear from Giles Penfound. Today is Armistice Day, so that's if you're listening to the show on the day of release. And if it's 11 o'clock or near to, press pause and observe the silence. The day World War I ended, 11 a.m, 11th day, 11th month, 1918. So I thought we'd take a moment to talk with Giles about the important work that photographers do in fields that we would, in the main, not dare tread. We got to say goodbye to somebody as well this week. Goodbye, Simpler.
Oh, yeah. Bless them. They've been very good.
Yeah.
Good old JP. Well, not goodbye.
They'll still occasionally pop up, but we felt that we'd given away about as many straps as we could, so we are looking for something new to replace it. I know we could give away Kev's dividers that he doesn't use in his bag or something.
I've got a new bag.
Have you?
Yeah.
We're taking dividers out.
It's a Hawks Mill bag. So Simpler, thank you very much to JP and Simpler Straps for helping us out and being so helping our listeners out, really.
Straps.
And he's also kindly sent me a couple, although they are stuck in customs right now, to give away at the conference on Wednesday, whenever. Along with, I've got some nice prizes actually, spot prizes.
You've got mugs and stuff, haven't you?
Yeah. So the goodie bag is very good.
Yeah.
It's got a mug
Gemma
in it.
did it last year. It's always good.
Gemma's doing it this year.
She did it this year, did she?
She's going to do it this year.
Does she know?
Yeah, I think so. Hopefully, because I'm very incapable of putting things in bags. Yeah, we've got mug. We've got
pay grade.
We've got a mug in there. We've got a nice Fujifilm UK have given everybody a A5 notebook, really nice, some pens, some USB things. So everybody will be getting those.
And a free X Pro 3 for everybody that comes to.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a joke, by the way. And although there will be X Pro 3s there to play with. And we've got some stuff, some discounts from Light Blue Software. They're going to be there. We've got some discounts from Jorgensen Albums. There will be London Camera Exchange will be there, so they will. If you do wish to buy anything, they will have some like double cashback deals and various other things like that. We've got some Instax Share printers and some Instax Share or Instax cameras
to give away.
Cameras
and
as well.
Instax cameras.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And some straps from JP when I get through to customs people. And I've bought a couple of bags to give away as spot prizes. So, and we'll do all the spot prize stuff at the end, like we did last year, where we do the Q&A
with questions and stuff.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to it actually, because
you've got to be in it to win it.
Got to be in it to win it.
So be there.
Yeah.
And we also thought we'd give a mention at the start of the shows to our wonderful, lovely Facebook group, which has grown. And if you're not in it, you should be in it. Remember, though, when you're there, play nice, as Woody said to Sid. Woody, do you not remember that scene from...
Zoe Ball's son, isn't it?
No.
It is?
Toy Story, Woody.
Oh.
Where Sid, you know, the one that bullies and pulls the heads off toys and stuff. No, you've not seen it. Okay. Anyway, so play nice in that group. And I thought we'd dig out some of the stuff we see right at the start of each show. This week, I'm going to mention, can I mention one? Stefan Carding. I'm going to share with you all a photographer that inspires me greatly. I'm an amateur landscape nature photographer. So we said naturist? That'd be totally different, wouldn't it? An amateur landscape naturist photographer would be an entirely different thing, wouldn't it? Living in British Columbia, Canada, but often admire other works of photography such as street and sport and so on and so forth. In order to help me understand using a camera to create stories, Frederick Trottervan, no,
come on, this is my trick. This is my trick.
Travatten, yes. He's a Danish street documentary photographer who's living in Mexico City and seems to have dedicated his time to telling the story of the Mexican culture. I'll link his Instagram. In fact, we'll put the Instagram link in for you in the show notes, and you'll find a YouTube channel as well. He's extremely Scandinavian, and he walks around Mexico. I've
seen some of his YouTube
blonde hair,
stuff.
blue eyes. Yeah. It doesn't look like he belongs at all.
No. But
he passes that off as an advantage, as he can seem more like a tourist. So, do you pick out any? Well, I picked out one last night because I wanted to put it straight in the Facebook group and answer him. Alan Schaller. I'm sure you'll know about him. In particular, Metropolis, which is where he has that project was all about showing the relative size of humans in the city.
And Smug Mug did a brilliant mini documentary about him on YouTube. If you go to the Smug Mug channel and look for the Alan Schiller. Is it Schiller or Schaller? Schaller, isn't it?
Schaller.
Yeah.
Schiller? Schaller.
Terrible. I love that little film they made of him, and also I think his work is amazing. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's get to the questions. Yours first.
So first question is from Jason Hugh, who is from Boston in Massachusetts. And he says, "Hi guys, when I heard my previous question was answered on the podcast, I was so excited that my wife told me to stop screaming like a small child." So I have another question. He says, "I shoot into the light a lot and have recently started printing my pictures at a local print shop. Some online articles suggested I should turn on highlight clipping warning in Capture One to look for blown out highlights."
Right.
You guessed it, I have a lot of blown out highlights when I shoot into the light. The main subject is fine, just a background. How do you guys deal with blown out highlights during printing when a subject is backlit? Should I spend time to fix it? Do you worry about highlight clipping in the not so important areas in pictures? Thanks, Jason, Boston, Massachusetts.
I let those highlights go, personally.
Yeah.
Unless you're radically underexposing a shot. And then sometimes I think it can almost look a bit false when you bring everything back in the front again. Well,
I mean, the fact is, if you're shooting with available light and you're not throwing a flashlight onto it or some kind of, you basically, if you want if it's backlit and you want your subject to be well exposed and you're using something like spot metering, then it will be overexposed in the background. Yeah. So your choices are to throw a light on it or change the direction of the light somehow. And highlight clipping is a good little. I have that switched on all the time in Lightroom. Yeah. And you can use the highlight slider to bring it down to a little bit if necessary. But obviously, once it's printed, that's the end of it. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't really.
Do you ever throw a light in? No, you don't, do you?
No, well, I have my little
You got your
Illuminuse.
but you don't use that during the day, do you?
No. You know what I did though when I was in Spain this year? I actually used the little camera on the the flash on the X100F, the little onboard one.
Yeah. So I saw the
It's brilliant,
and you liked it.
I liked it.
You
but
practically
daytime
became a flash photographer.
in the daytime. I was using it, and it was great because obviously it's really sunny in Spain.
Yeah.
And down on the beach and stuff. It made pictures look like great.
I know.
A bit better.
I thought they look really good. Would you ever use a flash like that at a wedding?
How about no?
No, I would not.
You didn't even need to think about that, did you?
No, I would not. Yeah, absolutely.
It's not in your religion.
I'd probably leave it behind when I was not saying goodbye to people on the way out.
This is a second mention now, so let's just in case you think, what are they talking about? You did rather I'd say a post in the Facebook group blew up about that, didn't it? In fact, it was a couple of weeks ago we mentioned this on the show about would you say goodbye to brides and grooms at weddings, and I think both of us were in that camp of it's not necessary. You don't have to. Waltz across the dance floor and say, bye, I'm going now. It's the kind of Shakespearean tragedy of the photographers leaving the room. I've always thought if they're having a great time, then fine, carry on.
You see, the thing is...
But if they're there on the way out, I will say goodbye.
Of course, yeah. Absolutely.
I think you were pegged as somebody that would just hold his head high and walk past everybody and whistle Dixie as he was walking out.
Shake my not very hairy head and the locks flashing behind me.
Yeah.
No, I actually say on my pre-wedding questionnaire to the clients, actually says on there, one of the things it says is, at the end of the day, I will just disappear into the night and let you carry on with your evening. So they're kind of forewarned. I thought it was quite funny.
Other people that don't say goodbye, the chef.
Yeah.
I'm going, I've cooked your meal, but I'm going now, lovey. I want a hug. We're gonna get told off.
We will get told off again, Dave. Yeah. But it's you know what? It's one of those things where it doesn't matter if you do it.
Yeah.
Great. If you don't,
lovely.
Great. Also, it would be a very boring world if we all did the same stuff.
Just give them a hug on the way out.
Yeah.
Tell him you love them.
Yeah, as long as they've paid.
Ben Gillett. Have we ever established if it's Ben Gillet or? I quite like Gillet because that sounds.
I'm pretty sure it's Gillett because Gillett. Gillett.
Oh, Gillett? Is it Gillett? Yes, it's Gillett.
I've been speaking to him on the phone as well. So,
well, you don't call him Gillett.
No, but he's been leaving messages, so he would.
But he wouldn't say hi. It's Ben Gillett. Oh, he might do.
Yeah, he would. Yeah. So,
did you go to a school where they used to call each other by your surnames?
The teachers used to call it. The sports teacher, certainly rugby teacher, used to Mullins.
Yeah.
The kids. Yeah, we used to call each other. I mean,
because in my lad's school, secondary school, they're called by their first name, and I think, maybe I'm being a bit Dickensian.
Maybe, that is a bit
old-fashioned.
Yeah.
Ben, thank you for your question. Just occurred to me that Neil perhaps could talk a little bit about the setting that he shot the Gambian film stuff on, Longop or HDR or standard presets, 4K and so on and so forth. Do you have a setup ready for films or?
Well, this is interesting because this is one of the things I was speaking to Ben about on the phone because he's coming to X Weddings to do some filming.
Yeah. The compression stuff is really important.
Yeah. So I basically said to him that I can't remember whether it's Longop or Intra, whichever one it basically creates the smallest files is absolutely fine for X Weddings.
Yeah. Longop is that one because Longop is essentially if you use Intra, it's writing a new frame every single frame, isn't it?
Yeah.
New information every single time, and if you're doing something really detailed like, I don't know, some street stuff like buses passing by in London and street lights behind you and people walking, then you want to be using Intra.
Yeah.
But if you're using something very simple like a Mullins video, where you're just talking to camera, then you can use Longop because the clever algorithms and stuff that's going on behind the scenes is working out what part of that scene is not moving and not rewriting it every single time.
Yeah. Essentially, one is slightly less quality but much smaller, or better compression. One is better quality and less compression, but to the naked eye.
Yeah. And H.264.
H.264, yeah. So H.265 will produce much smaller files, but will be much more processor intensive when editing.
Absolutely.
I did the H.265 film. I filmed when the XT3 came out, and it had 60 frames per second, 4K 60 frames per second, that was it. And it was like the first camera that did it. I think it might still be the only camera that does it. So I went to London and did. I put the camera on the highest possible quality and put it on H.265.
Steam coming out the machine.
Honestly, the quality was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
The footage was absolutely adorable. Once I'd finished processing it in in Photoshop, in Premiere Pro. It's early. It's very early. In Premiere Pro,
it took a long time, didn't it?
It took a long time to render and process. Yeah, and you had to download. I had to download a new codec renderer for Premiere Pro.
Wow. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it was.
How long did that take? I mean, your machine is like space age stuff.
Yeah,
you've got more memory and processing than
this was on
NASA having a space shuttle.
This was on my old rubbish machine that I sold to Steve Vaughan.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Yeah, so it was a bit slower.
But it's still. Don't tell that. Steve will be writing in. Have your machine back.
But yeah, no. I mean, it was a good like 3 or 4 times longer than regular rendering.
Okay.
Right. So, did we answer his question?
Yeah, we did, I think. Thank you, Ben.
I'm looking forward to seeing Ben.
Yeah, your question.
I have a question from Marcus in Leeds. Hi, chaps. I had an interesting question from my wife the other day. We only got married a few months ago.
Warning.
We only got married a few months ago, and we had a female photographer who was amazing.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, she did the bridal prep shots with all the girls getting dressed, etc. So this sparked my now new wife to say, in quotes, "Are you seriously going to take pictures of women getting dressed and made up? You're a man, and you're also my husband."
Oh.
How do you guys handle being in a room with the women in states of undress and being made up, etc.? Is it awkward? And what are your tips and tricks to dealing with this?
No, I just knock on the door and say, "Is everybody decent?"
Yeah, I mean,
half decent is usually what I use, a kind of comical reference to it.
I generally do something very similar, and at the point where I pretty much only spend 30 minutes at bridal prep. I think that's absolutely enough for them to have a small, round, fat, hairy Welshman in the room with them. So I do about half an hour, and if I'm there, so I'm rarely there actually when the bride is putting her gown on, her wedding gown. But if I am there when that happens, or the bridesmaids decide to get changed or something, then I'll just say, right, I'm going to go outside. Give me a shout once everything that should be hidden is hidden.
Yeah.
And then I come back in. So yeah, not a problem whatsoever. You've got to do the job. And also remember that if they don't want, it's always an option. I always say to them, you don't have to have bridal prep. It's not. You can roll the coverage on later in the evening if you want, or I offer options for ceremony to first dance only. So not everybody has it. Most people do, but not everybody. And it's pretty straighthtforward. What I liked about that question was, though,
I think your wife's going to have to get used to you working as a wedding photographer on this one, and not everybody's taking pictures. It's not a lingerie shoot, and I think that's what some people think. It's a lingerie shoot. No, it's not.
It's a bit where she goes, "You're a man, and you're also my husband."
Yes, yeah.
I love that. However, you mentioned lingerie. I did do a wedding once a long time ago where the bride said to me, she sent me an email especially beforehand. She said, "It's a bit of a weird question," she said, "but I've got some really special underwear that for the wedding, and I would love to have some pictures taken of me in it before I get in my wedding dress, because I think my husband would like it."
Wow.
And I was like, okay.
I'll do that.
All right.
You said?
Yeah, I did.
Professional way?
I did it. Yeah, fine. I did it. Of course, I did it. But yeah, I remember speaking to Gemma about that, and she was like, that's a bit weird. Yeah. Not. She didn't say, "You are also my husband."
I can imagine they're standing at the front door with their arms crossed. "You're not going out, Mullins."
Oh, you see, Gemma said, Gemma doesn't like the growling.
Doesn't she?
When we mentioned Gemma, she said, I love the fact that you can take the mick out of me, and I love the fact that I'm part of the show, but less of the growling, she said. But it's so true. It's so true.
Staying in, I'm sorry.
She's only joking. Yeah.
Funny enough, a couple of mails arrived into Gemma this week.
Oh.
Yeah, here we go. First one. No, well, I didn't do it then.
No, that was me.
Dear Gemma, at the end of an otherwise fabulous Fujicast, Kevin sang a snippet of the Jolly Green Giant jingle and rendered it admirably. See, he did it well. Should have stopped when he was ahead, though. He went on to state that Keith Krause was the voice, not only for the Jolly Green Giant, but also for Darth Vader. Really? Are you sure it was not Elmer Len Dressler and James Earl Jones, respectively? I wanted to send this email directly to Gemma because at the end of your show you say send all complaints to your wives. Anyway, keep trying, gents. The important stuff you generally get dead on. And another one came in. Kevin and Neil, regarding my lull in fact-checking, because we thought he'd been a bit quiet of late. May I point out that you seem to have ignored my calling out Kevin for stating that it was Picasso who cut off his own ear, and Neil for airing the most horrid recording of the lovely Western screech owl. I think we did mention that.
I think we mentioned that bit. But he's right about the Jolly Green Giant. And I knew, the moment I said it...
You knew it.
I thought, actually, I think he was the Green Cross Code Man. So Darth Vader was the Green Cross Code Man, not the Jolly Green Giant.
That's right. So Alan Gump, the Gump is right.
And that's all I have to say about that.
Absolutely. Right, you can do a question.
Okay, I've got one from Adam Gerhold, and he is from New Hampshire in USA. Okay, he says, love the podcast, very appreciative for the content, etc, 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 etc,
blah,
etc.
blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah. I'm looking for some advice. I posed the question in the Facebook group and got a lot of wonderful help and advice, but I wanted to run it by you guys too. I stopped in my local camera shop to put my name on the hold list for the X Pro 3, and they had
you lucky man!
They had a few used lenses in the shop in good shape. The 18mm f2, 23mm f1.4. I have the X100F now, which I love. I also shoot music and wedding photography, and I just shot a full wedding with just the X100F. So for a second body and between 18 and 23mm, what do you think? Bearing in mind he's got a X100F, so essentially, what should he get for his X Pro 2? Should he have the 18mm, 23mm?
I'd go for the 23 because it's going to give you a little bit more when you need it in low light. You got another stop, haven't you?
Yes, because it's 23mm f1.4 and the X100F is only an f2 lens. So, yeah, perhaps. Although then he's going to have two cameras with exactly the same focal length.
That's true. That was a terrible suggestion. In which case, I do like the 18. I remember seeing Patrick Larocque use it in Brighton, and the stuff that he got from it on the street, I thought was lovely.
And Facundo just uses
Facundo
the 18,
he just uses that for his weddings, actually in low light as well. To be fair,
but his low light weddings in Argentina are, there's fireworks and dancing, and
not all the time,
throwing tequila down each other's throats and everything.
It's not all the time.
I love that 18mm f2. I really, when they kind of ask us every now and again, what lenses should we update next, and I'm forever going 18mm f2, 18mm f2. But apparently it's not it's not like one of the big selling lenses. So
maybe because it needs updating.
No, I think it's the weird focal length, isn't it? 18mm is like the equivalent of
28. Isn't it?
Yeah, 27.6 or something. Right. So I think it's something to do with that. But yeah, I love that. So my choice would be 18mm.
I think it's good as a focal length because sometimes 24 in the old-fashioned money terms is too wide, and 35 you're too close. So you want it so if you're looking at the 28mm full frame language there, that's a really good in-betweener, isn't it? I
spent the last three or 4 days in London with the X Pro 3 when I've been shooting with the 35mm f2,
right?
And I don't really use the 35mm f2 much, but I really kind of got back in with it. I quite liked it.
So for the muggles, that's about 50mm.
Yeah. It's not a traditional kind of street photography lens, but you can get some fairly funky stuff with it.
We should think of a new sort of when we talk about the difference in APS-C lens and full frame lens reference. There should be muggles, of course, is a Harry Potter reference. What it could be Luggles.
Luggles.
Luggle. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm going anywhere with that. Let's quit while we're ahead. Right, this week's interview.
Luggles.
Right, serious face on. This week's interview. I wanted to do something a bit different this week. And we often talk about Giles Penfound, my good buddy, who was a former army press photographer. There's a juxtaposition which we'll talk about in a moment. And I wanted to talk to Giles about what it means to work in the extremity of conflict as a photographer. And I know we've talked about conflict of late a few times, but it does seem appropriate for this particular episode, in particular those who, in our profession, photography, gave their lives in pursuit of the story. Photographers like Dickie Chappelle, one of the first female war photographers who lost her life in Vietnam. Although, when I say first, a little research uncovers some notable female photographers who survived the First World War. Christina Broom and Olive Edis. Tim Hetherington and Chris Hondras, who made their final stories in Libya. Mika Yamamoto from Japan, who lost her life in Syria. Seeking the truth has been the job of journalists and photographers at war, and in the so-called Great War, The first appointed official photographer for the British Army was Ernest Brooks. Now, Ernest seemingly had little or no reservations about recreating scenes that he had witnessed earlier, or even posing photographs outright. Other journalists exposed him for faking these photographs, and it stopped the practice, certainly by Brooks. And during that war, questions about whether a photographer's role was to illustrate the facts or show them exactly as is were all being addressed for the first time. And so today, 11/11, a respectful bow of our collective here on the Fujicast for those who passed on making stories, making their pictures and telling truths so that we are aware or conscious about what truly happens past many of our suburban front doors. And a moment for Robert Capa, born Andra Erno Friedman, who is widely regarded as one of the most important photographers of this genre, and who lost his life in the First Indochina War.
It's believed they were soon caught in a crossfire, and she died from a gunshot to the neck.
They were the latest casualties in the battle for control of the country's third largest city. Britain Tim Hetherington's documentary film Restrepo was nominated.
Civilians and rebels were indiscriminately shelled. The media centre housing them and other journalists was, eyewitnesses say, specifically and methodically targeted.
I remember you in the film that we made, where we talked about war photography and conflict photography, and I'm not very good. I'm going to paraphrase it. You said that war isn't fun. There's nothing particularly glamorous about it. It's full of putrid smells and horrible noises, and so your own experience of being in a conflict zone is not one of, didn't seem to be of great cherish.
It isn't now. I think this is where one has to be kind of really, really honest. And if I look back on the work now, I look back on it with kind of different eyes, more mature eyes, a mature heart of being a father and a husband and all the rest of it. But the reality is when I was there doing it, I absolutely loved it. I really did, and you know, I was as much hooked into the thing of it as all the other people who've kind of gone before me, you know. And it is. I mean, Don McCullum said, you know, it's a big hit. It's a big kick, you know. No matter what you say, no matter what you've kind of been in, because I think it's so extraordinary and different to normal life.
What difference does it make that you had a uniform and he didn't?
Well, yeah, and this is what. You know, I learned that very, very quickly, and a lot of people within my organisation, I think a lot of people forget about what real photographers do, real press photographers do. I wasn't. I was an army photographer, so I had access. Not only did I have access to all of this stuff, but I had a great big support machine behind me.
Did you have better access?
In terms, yes, sometimes of getting to places, yeah, absolutely. But in terms of freedom of movement and freedom of actually producing the story, no, I didn't, because at the end of the day, irrespective of my personal feelings, I had to produce work for the army, for the propaganda machine. Yeah. Okay, I did my own stuff as well, but you know, when you people like, you know, Don McCullum or you know, any of the great Tim Hetherington, whatever, you have an agenda, you have an idea of who you're shooting for, what the story is, and so. You're not hidebound by the system that's supporting you, which is why in Iraq and Afghanistan it caused such huge problems. It was because the embedded photographers were seen as almost kind of the puppets and the pawns of, you know, the British and American military, because they would only, in effect, get their succor and get their support if they did the right stories. But people like Don McCullum, you know, he wasn't into any of that, or any of them. Don McCullum, Tim Hetherington, James Natchway. But he went into northern Iraq, and so he had no support network. He just had, you know, his own gumption, you know, knowledge, you know, his ability to get the stuff done, and also the ability to find the story. So for him and people like him, you know, I think that's what people forget. It's not it's not like it is in the movies where they kind of, I guess sometimes they do rock up at the hotel and it's, drinks at 4 and all the rest of it. But they've got to find their way there. They're not, and if they get shot or if they get injured, who do they go to?
You had a support mechanism behind you. Medics.
Absolutely.
You could be flown out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, the last couple of weeks, we've talked to a couple of photographers who have not been embedded, and they talked about the importance of the fixer. Your fixer was the whole industry, if that's the correct phrase, behind that war.
My fixer was...
You didn't have to rely upon somebody that might sell you to the highest bidder.
No, absolutely not, because I was just a PR photographer. That's the cold, hard reality of...
Isn't that weird, a PR photographer? And
it's awful.
For conflict.
It's just appalling.
The two words, there's such a juxtaposition.
It's appalling.
Yeah.
It really is. So, but the idea and the concept of that fixer that is still exactly the same. So, say for instance, when I went to Fallujah with the Black Watch, I was just some bloke, irrespective of the fact that I was a warrant officer. I was just some bloke turning up with a camera. They had no idea who I was. I had an idea of the working of their environment, their battalion, because I'd been in the infantry. But I had to get my fixers. I had to make my connections.
Right. So you still had to. Yeah.
So it's just different. So I got to know, I got to know the drivers. I got to know the chefs. I got to know, the guys who I knew would get me places. So the idea of finding somebody who can help you is exactly the same. But also, irrespective of who you work for, whether it's me being an army photographer or Don McCullen, you need people who will get you access.
I always remember you telling me a story about the boots. You made a photograph of a squaddie with his boots by him, and the boots were in a terrible state. And that one picture got you in a lot of trouble, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, because
why?
Well, because it was right at the time when there was a massive contention about British troops having the right equipment, and it was absolutely right because whilst the guys on the ground had no kit or had no body armour, up at the main logistics store in the Midlands, there was all the kit that they could ever want.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have anecdotal evidence to prove that, but I can't prove it straight off. So anyway, I took this picture. It was just before we went into Basra. There was a guy from the Irish Guards. Irish Guards Battalion, and they just had an O group to figure out what they were going to do and all this. And basically, he was sat down by the side of his warrior, cleaning his feet, and there was a guy next to him who just sat there, just relaxing. And he had his feet got crossed over, and half his boot was hanging off because they were rubbish. And they were, and the kit has always been rubbish.
Not exactly the PR that the British Army wanted out their PR photography department.
No. So I took the picture, and it's actually taped together with Black Nasty, the name we had for the
name for gaffer tape.
The gaffer tape we call
Black
it
Nasty.
Black
Right, okay.
This is fantastic. Everything.
Everything. If you put gaff around anything, it just holds it together.
It does. It's magic.
I think my VW Beetle, my first car, was held together by what would have been grey nasty, actually.
But I took this picture at a really low angle with the boot in the sort of the foreground, because to me it was an indication of the strength of not only him, but for me the British Army in general, is that you don't give up because your boot's hanging off. You continue, and that's what this guy was.
Oh, so you saw the story one way,
and
they saw it entirely
they
another
just
way.
Went completely tonto because they had no idea of the contents of the picture. And this is where embedded journalists would have a massive problem as well, because if they would see something, where do they go off message? And the pressure on them to stay on message because they're being supported. But when you're not embedded, Vietnam killed all of that because the photographers and everybody was given such free rein to do what they wanted to do. Take, for instance, Philip Jones Griffiths, the guy who documented the realities of the Vietnam War so perfectly and exquisitely, and was so anti what the Americans were doing in terms of not only the images he made, but also the text that he wrote. Vietnam Inc. is the book that he produced. But he wasn't hidebound by other people's idea of what he should do, because he was completely independent. And also, modern people today, there's, to my shame, that I know there's people working in Syria at the moment. There's photographers, male and female photographers working in the Yemen. Extraordinary people who understand what their story is, or rather the story that they need to get out, the story that they need to tell. And so they go and do it, and to massive personal risk. Or even just the difficulty of operating on a normal day. Where do they get water? Where do they get food? How are they assured of coming back from this operation that they go to?
Was Vietnam either the last place where true freedom, press freedom existed, or was it the start of the press freedom that we expect today?
I think it's a bit of both. I think they both go hand in hand, to be honest with you, because I think in Korea, perhaps even the Second World War, there'd been a lot of reporters, people like Capa. Okay, we go back to Capa. People like Capa who would report on what was going on, and that continued. But I think it kind of reached its zenith, really, and everything came together in terms of magazine publishing, the ability to get the message out, TV, with the Vietnam War, where the Americans just had no clue. And I would argue that I say the Americans, but the military establishment, they still don't have a clue. They still don't have a clue about the real power of the image. But they were so happy, because I think they were so blinkered in their belief of what they were doing was right, that they kind of went, oh yeah, of course you can come on this. You talk to I've talked to a kind of number of people who were there, who photographed there, who were TV journalists, and they could literally do anything, because the Americans would give them officer status, so they would be able to get into these places.
All right, so they had all that access.
Yeah, just extraordinary access.
Didn't McCullin actually jump on a lot the those opportunities, didn't he?
Yeah. No, very much so. McCullin is famous for. The man's famous for everything. He's just remarkable in every regard. But you talk about courage. You talk about that ability to see a story and go after it and not be put off by anything. And I can't remember what it was, but it was in the Congo during the massive civil war there. He kind of went over and he was told that there's no way he could get into, I think it was Stanleyville, because the British mercenary Mike Hoare was operating there, and so he basically befriended a mercenary, told him to wake him up. When they went to go and board the plane the next morning to go into Stanleyville, he just bluffed his way in and said he was a merc. Got into Stanleyville, and he was found out. And Mike Hoare was happy to hand him over to I think it was the Congolese rebels. But and so. It didn't happen, but right in amongst this, under the threat of being handed over to the opposing side, there's McCullin
still making
images.
Yeah. Maybe aware that they might be the last he's making.
Well, yeah, and you see the images he's making. These are not stood back. These are, Capa's famously quoted for saying, "If your pictures aren't good enough, you're not close enough." That's about geography, but also that's about intensity of emotion as well. And you look at Don McCullin's work, and I think it was Stanleyville, but you see the intensity of the images and how close he is, physically and emotionally, to the action that's going on. It actually isn't. It's not about McCullin, and I know this of him. He would hate. He would hate to think that it's about him. What it's about the story. It's about the people. It's that responsibility of making those images that tell of this event that happened, that tell of those people who were killed or whatever. And it's just, I find it amazing that I think it goes back to strength of character.
I'm acutely aware that there will be many people listening to this particular episode after 11/11. But I wanted to make something about photographers who, in plying their important trade, paid the ultimate personal sacrifice, like Robert Capa.
Yeah. I don't think he made the ultimate sacrifice. I think No, I don't. I think he was just doing what he absolutely loved doing, And his arrogance, and I mean that in the most positive possible way, his arrogance was such, and his self-confidence was such, was that, you know, I don't have any first-hand testimony of this, but I can just imagine what he was like. Was, well, that's what I'm here to do. You know, that, you know, he was well known for getting into these sort of situations. I don't think he ever thought, oh, I'm sacrificing anything. I think if he wasn't allowed to go, I think
he'd have felt that was a
sacrifice. I'm sure he'd balk at the idea of him being thought of as he sacrificed anything, because what did it do? Nothing. You know, his pictures didn't change anything.
Well, McCullin often talks about this, that nothing he's done has changed the world.
No.
I mean, I'd argue with that, but
I think it informs and it
creates debate.
Yeah, creates. You know, was it Tom Stoddard? Just amazing, just a remarkable British photojournalist. You know, his idea is bearing witness. Okay, I don't think any of this is about
changing the world. It's about being a witness, which is probably why he called his book Eyewitness. Yeah. But going back to Capa's early days then, it was you told me an interesting story that it was actually his wife that was probably responsible for Capa being famous at all.
He fled from Hungary. You know, he was a Hungarian Jew, fled from Hungary. I think he went to the United States first, or he may have gone through the UK. But he got to know, and whether he was married to or just had a relationship with a woman called Gerda Taro, who was very much the driving force behind him, his own little PR machine.
Right.
And
to think there was PR.
Yeah,
at that point in photography.
Yeah, and I don't think
in
it
that
was.
way.
I don't think it was anything official. I don't think he employed her as a PR machine. But it's clearly.
But she turned out to be pretty good PR.
Oh, she was brilliant, and you know, she ultimately paid the ultimate sacrifice in that regard, because she died in the Spanish Civil War when he was photographing. Back to your question is that she, and I think linked to the Picture Post's article in fact I've got it here in front of me, so it's Picture Post Volume 1 number 10.
Oh, that's precious.
It's just fantastic. It's just this beautiful,
I can smell it from here.
It's just this beautiful old, which was December 3rd 1938 it was printed.
3 old pennies.
Yeah, there we go. And you know, on page 13 there's a picture of Capa with a I think it's a Bolex a camera, and the title is The Greatest War Photographer in the World, Robert Capa. Now, this is where the legend really, really started. This combined with his work in the Spanish Civil War, but also with Gerda, because Gerda would, you know, go to publishers or people to get his work published, and she'd say to him, "Well, of course you should know Robert Capa. He's this world famous American photographer.
Don't you know him?"
No, and they came up with this term, this with Bob Capa.
That's where it came from.
They engineered Bob Capa.
Gerda engineered the greatest war photographer of all time.
Yeah. So I think, you know, it seems to me with her and this article, you know, I've got it in front of me now, this Picture Post article of December 3rd, 1938. All of a sudden, this, you know, where do legends come from? Where does the idea of this famous, this wonderful person come from? Well, it's undoubtedly he's an absolutely brilliant photographer. There's no doubt. Not only in his time, but I think in our time as well.
Did he have, in modern parlance, the X factor?
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, he couldn't have anything but. You know, this is the guy who established Magnum, or helped to establish Magnum for photos. And evidently a lot of their early revenue was down to his very good ability to win money on the horses.
No, really?
Yes. You know, along with, you know, with Cartier-Bresson and
little known fact about photography and Magnum.
You know, and you know, if I got it wrong, Magnum, I apologise. But you know, I've seen a few documentaries about him, and he was this extraordinary force of nature. You know, who, in a similar way to, you know, a lot of these kind of young movie actors who make it really big but die young. You know,
James Dean.
There we go. There's a guy I was thinking of, James Dean. You know, you couldn't imagine James Dean now as an 80-year-old, could you?
No, not really.
You know,
no.
You know, as all, you know, don't want people to die, but you know, I think he lived the life.
Yeah.
You know, he was he went and photographed in Hollywood, I think during some kind of fallow years, but then he became kind of amorously linked to one of the big Hollywood stars. Whether he married her or not, I can't remember. It's the mother of Isabella Rossellini, and so there was this, because he was this legend that was created, and also backed up. It wasn't just fluff and nonsense. Absolutely backed up by the quality and the integrity of his work that he did.
Was he the greatest photographer?
I disagree that he's the greatest war photographer ever. I mean, that's a horrible thing to say, isn't it? But
who would that be?
Yeah, I mean, but it's an appalling thing to say. Top 10 list of the greatest war photographers. Yeah. It's by the nature.
Would you want that accolade?
Yeah, it's an appalling thing. But at the time he was working, yes, absolutely phenomenal guy. But there were other people around him who didn't have that kind of star factor and all the rest of it. Look at the work of Bert Hardy. His work in Korea. And also with Picture Post as well.
What about Tim Page?
I don't know. I don't think he's one of the greatest war photographers. I think he was just a legend.
Yeah.
He was one of these amazing photographers that in the 60s. I don't know what his motivation was, but he basically just turned up in South Vietnam with a couple of cameras and started working.
Tim did.
Yeah.
I mean, his sacrifice that he had was he lost a third of his brain or something?
Well, he certainly lost, I think,
some sort of enormous amount.
4 fluid ounces or something like that.
Goodness,
of his brain. He was
and still working.
And he was pronounced dead at one stage.
Yeah.
But he lives in Melbourne, not Melbourne, Darwin in Australia. And so all these other characters, like Don McCullum. I mean, you look at, again, I think it's about the integrity of the work, about what they're showing, what they're highlighting. And I think people have latched onto this idea of Capa because of this article and because of the myth and the legend that was built up around him. But in terms of the breadth and the depth of work and the perhaps even the truth of the work, I think there are other people out there. I mean, Alexandra Boulay, who she just a remarkable female photographer. But she worked for the agency Seven. She helped set up Seven. And I think I can't remember where she was killed, but she was killed on assignment. Somebody like Anastasia Taylor Lind, who's a current photographer. Guts and determination to go out and do what's necessary as opposed to, what you're just being told. So I think perhaps this idea that there has to be a greatest, perhaps that shouldn't be the thing. Perhaps it should just be these people had the strength of character and the ability to go forward and tell stories.
How did it end for Capa?
Really badly.
I mean, we know he was killed in the field.
It was.
Again, I want you to tell the story. In fact, you have in this incredible book that you've got of Capa's life, the last frame that he took.
So I'll turn to it now, and there's it's a section right at the end of the book, and it's called Capa: The Definitive Collection, and there is a series of 7 images that he made on the 25th of May 1954. And the last image, which it says, by about 2:30 in the afternoon of May the 25th, 1954, the fort at Dohan had been evacuated and was to be blown up as soon as the French convoy had reached a safe distance. Capa was with a group of soldiers, and he said, Capa walked up the road and then photographed a platoon advancing through the tall grass, preceded by men with mine detectors. As he began to walk up a grassy slope, he stepped on an anti-personnel mine and was killed. And so was...
now that camera survived. Amazing.
Yeah. And so was set into stone.
That last photograph is still there.
It's still there.
Yeah.
That, and look, it's not a great picture, but it's...
These are record images at the end, aren't they, really?
Well, there we go. It's a...
As a single image doesn't make a definitive story, but as a collection makes sense.
This is the final image of his remarkable body of work. I think goes to the integrity of him as a... Take all the flannel and the kind of the James Bond type of thing away from it, because I think there certainly was a lot of that. In the end, I believe he just was this most remarkable photographer who wanted to tell a story in the most unvarnished way. And the fact that, I mean, he took this image, and shortly after, he was killed. Now, there's other people who've been like that. W. Eugene Smith, for instance, another just titan of photography. He was pretty much blown up in the Second World War, but he stood up during a mortar attack to take a picture because he wanted to record what was going on, and he was nearly killed. Thankfully he wasn't, because the other body of his work remained. What's sad about Capa, what's really sad is, what would he have gone on to do? It's that unanswerable question, isn't it? About, but perhaps, there's that, Janis Joplin and these kind of famous rock stars and who died, I think, is it 27? The James Dean, people like this. The kind of the legend goes on, and is enhanced and perhaps falsely created by that. And what gets forgotten is the actual work, and what even gets forgotten above that are the stories about the people he photographed.
My thanks to Giles this week for his time in a special recording on what is, for those that are listening on the Monday, the 11/11 episode. Right, back to questions. Oh, before we go to questions, Emily Ragnier suggested a really good idea over the week, didn't she?
She did.
We can't think of a name for it. You're going to have to help us here.
Yeah, Luggles. Let's call it Luggles.
No, I think we've moved on from that terrible moment. The idea was that that we've all made mistakes at weddings and portrait shoots and stuff. And the idea was that people gave us their worst mistakes that they've made. And there was some sort of idea of absolution, which was far too close to a feature that's on BBC Radio already. so we didn't want to do that. So what do you think?
I reckon we should. I thought it was a great idea, actually, and we should take the best one.
Yeah.
Or the most. The one that we kind of go, oh my god, to the most, and
the shock horror one.
Yeah, maybe we'll I don't know, what can we give them?
Some sort of prize, or
no, we've got nothing to give them now.
We have.
Give them a bit of love.
Got an X Pro 3 over there.
Yeah, maybe we'll figure something out.
Yeah, there'll be a prize. Don't worry. So we need a name for it, though, don't we? Well, first of all, we need stuff that's gone wrong when you're on shoot.
But also, not necessarily stuff that's gone wrong, but stuff that you've done that then you had to cover up, or you hid, or you're embarrassed to mention. And if you want to send it in anonymously...
we'll hide the names, don't worry.
Yeah, we won't say it yet.
I've got a good one to start with, if you like.
Have you? Go on then.
Because a couple of weeks have gone by and the groom and bride are really happy with the pictures, and we've had a couple of chats, so I'm not afraid to mention it. I didn't want to mention it before. I thought, I won't mention that. But it was earlier in the season, let me just say, and we were at a particular Catholic church in and this church, it's a fantastic church. You photographed there. It's quite dark.
I know what you mean.
And there's a little bell that exists, and the church so it adjoins two buildings on each side.
Yeah.
So if you look at the church, you think, all right, okay, that's a church with townhouses each side. But actually, one of the townhouses is the residence of the Catholic priest. Mm-hmm. So he will come down. And it's quite a long church. It stretches back quite a way. And at the back, there's an organist, and he can't ever hope to see when the ceremony is starting. So there's a queue, and the queue is that the priest will walk down through this quite tight corridor down into the church, and on his way down into this church, he ding rings the bell, and the organist thinks, that's it, fantastic, we'll start, and the music starts. The bride walks in, the whole thing starts. And then towards the end, we all file up, you see, back into the priest's quarters, if you like, into that townhouse next door, through that really small corridor to go sign the register. And then when the register is signed, you come back down out that small corridor, and the priest will ring the bell, da-ding, da-ding, and the organist will think, right, that's time for recession. But on this particular day, the priest had said to me, right, when we come down through that archway between the townhouse and the church again, we're not ringing the bell because we've got mass and another couple of hymns. Fine. So we go up, we go through that little archway, alleyway, I'm calling it different names now. We go sign the register, we come back down, and I think, right, I'll scoot ahead of them so I can get a shot of them just coming out before we take mass. And as I'm going down the steps, I slip. And on the way down, and I put my arm up and I grab the bell and it goes ding, ding, ding. I think for a second I'm thinking, oh, how embarrassing, people are going to see that I've rung it. And then I think, oh no. Then the organist thinks, haven't we got mass and another couple of hymns? Oh, I must want to end it early. So he starts playing the recessional music. I look back at the priest. I say, don't worry, I'll run down the end and tell the organist to stop. And he looks at me and he says, it's done now. So there we go.
You're going to hell.
That particular wedding
bonfires.
was about 25 minutes less.
Yeah, although I know exactly the church you're on about, and I know exactly the priest you're on about, and I'm sure he would have been very grateful.
Yeah.
You'd have been.
I saw him in the pub on the way back.
He'd have been asleep in his chair again by the end of that. By the time they got to the end.
Anyway, that's
brilliant.
the sort of thing that we're talking about.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah,
right.
Send them in, and if you do want to be anonymous,
you can
just mention it, and then we won't mention your name.
Yeah.
But me and Neil will always know. Okay, so I have a question from Ali Stewart in Dundee. And it's actually a really...
The Ali Stewart.
The Ali
Not
Stewart.
the Ali Stewart.
Yeah. At the end, she says, I'm looking forward to a bath.
What?
Yeah. I think... I'm looking forward to Bath. So Ali's coming on Tuesday.
Don't be rude.
He's coming on Tuesday. Now, it's quite a long bit of text, but the question is quite interesting.
Okay, settle in, everyone.
Yeah, settle in. Kevin's Christmas present story had me welling up today. Your mum is a star. She should be working in the ad team at John Lewis. So for reference, that was when my mum gave me the brilliant, and my dad in fairness, a brilliant Christmas
you thought you were only
triage
getting
of
one
gifts.
present and you got all three.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a tear-jerking moment.
Yeah, it was. So anyway, her question goes on from there, and it says, I've recently been seeing a lot of disaster tourism photography being posted on Facebook. They are mainly of Chernobyl, where creatives, in commas, go as a group to photograph the devastation. These images are shot with a wide aperture and have a preset over them, the filter. She goes on to say, I think it's so wrong to treat a disaster like this. I'm interested in your thoughts on this. Is it different from grainy black and white images of post-World War II disaster sites? My thoughts are that it is different, especially the preset hashtag. And I guess by that she's kind of, on Instagram, people will hashtag these pictures such as Chernobyl and stuff. Is that different from writing that a Vietnam or World War image was taken on Tri-X? Thanks, it just doesn't sit well with me, and I wanted to know your opinion. I know I could just not look at the work on the ground, but occasionally I look to see what the trends are, and then I usually forget about them, but these images really got me thinking. It's quite interesting.
It is interesting. I've never thought of... Chernobyl was obviously a huge disaster, humanitarian, nature and everything, but of course, because there isn't the horrors of pictures of prisoners of war or execution or anything, so the terrible things that happen by virtue of it, you don't tend to think of in quite the same way, and maybe that's why people feel that they can do these kind of tourist trips to Chernobyl, because the interest of seeing derelict classrooms and derelict fun fairs, and there's an old theatre that gets photographed a lot, isn't there?
I think there's a couple of facets to this little conversation. One is that so something like Chernobyl, it has become a tourist attraction, so you can go on holiday there.
It's weird, isn't it?
I've got friends. Rob and Sarah went to Chernobyl.
But you wouldn't stay there, do you? You stay close by, and they ship you in each day, don't they?
And so there is Chernobyl sightseeing things that go on. So I suppose to that extent, then, if that's being, I don't know whether exploited is the right word, but monetized in some way, then I guess that it's kind of fair play. However, I suppose what really kind of gets to me a little bit is, we have this we're in this world of citizen journalism now. So at the bottom of every BBC article about anything that's going on, it will say, were you there? Can you send us your pictures? Yeah. And you get, whenever anything is happening, especially in kind of the big cities, you will find the press photographers doing their job correctly and rightly so, and then everybody else with their cameras and their iPhones and all that stuff, who are basically, I mean, not all of them, but a lot of them will be thinking, it's going to look great on Facebook. This is going to look amazing on Facebook, and that kind of thing doesn't sit particularly well with me. I must admit, that kind of, my thoughts on.
You only
on
have
that.
a certain amount of time there, don't you? As well, I think you're allowed to spend so many.
I guess
hours
so.
there. I was saying they're
so.
checking you on the way out. Yeah, is that the Expo 3? It looks a bit green.
Yeah,
What's going on?
It's like those lenses, those thorium lenses.
Oh yeah, we found out about that, didn't we? Yeah, I don't know. I was quite interested to go to Chernobyl quite a few years ago, before all this big tourism thing happened, because you could arrange a great expense at that stage, an opportunity to go, and I wanted to make a small film. But
I'd love to go to North Korea. I'd love to go to North Korea. Anyway, so yeah, I'm kind of on the fence about that, Ali. I totally understand what you're saying about, the just putting filters on it and making a point about how the photography, the technology and the fact you're there rather than the kind of, the historical elements of it. And if people didn't take pictures, we wouldn't have the knowledge. So I suppose that's part of it also.
I'm fascinated by pictures of Chernobyl. It's one of those places that I can get lost in YouTube or Instagram the moment that, sometimes you get led to something, you think, oh, that's interesting. And then before you know it, you've spent an hour and a half, 2 hours looking at.
Well, if you go to Merthyr Tydfil on Sunday morning, it's pretty much the same.
They Geiger countering you out of the nightclub. Yeah, okay.
Good question, Ali.
Very good.
Thank you.
Do you ever find yourself stuck in those places on YouTube and social media where I always also find those photographic trips that people make to deserted fun fairs in America, and I always find those fascinating.
Jay Farrell does that, doesn't he? We know Jay, American photographer from Kansas, I think. No, from
New York.
No,
it's Mississippi.
No.
Where's he from?
He is actually from New York. He's born in New York, but now he lives in country Kansas kind of direction, somewhere down there.
But that doesn't Kansas somewhere down there.
Yeah,
it's a huge place. Gump, you're going to have to fact check us on this one.
Houston, somewhere like that.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, I think that's where he lives.
No,
though.
Sorry.
Or is it New Orleans he lives?
There we go.
I don't know. Jay'll tell us. God, this is terrible, isn't it? This is terrible, Muriel. Anyway, he does that. He's written books. He's got books published. Brilliant books, actually. He sent me one with basically just derelict left houses. Yeah,
I find those fascinating. I can get lost in YouTube in particular for ages looking. I don't know if I'd have the guts to go. I did go to Greenham Common, funnily enough. So I have done it once. I was about to say I don't think I'd have the guts to walk around somewhere where you're absolutely on your own and you don't know who's in there. But for when I so it's going back 15 years, and those that aren't aware of Greenham Common, it's an American airbase that's reasonably close by to where this studio is. It's no longer an American airbase, and it's been reclaimed by nature, and now cattle roam the lands. But you can still see what was the longest runway in Europe. It's sort of burned into the countryside now, really, even though they took the tarmac away and used it for partly for the big ring road that now goes around Newbury. But I went into what were the silos, the nuclear bunkers where they kept the missiles, and they were always fenced off with big signs that do not enter. But the people had cut holes in the fences, gone through, and I thought, for my photo project that I was doing at the time, I really wanted to get some pictures of it. And I went in with an old film camera and a Nikon F5, so not that old, and made pictures of inside the silos. That was an eerie thing. That was, So I think people have a lot of guts that do that sort of thing.
Yeah, I guess.
Right.
You'll go.
I'm not sure if this is actually the Eddie McKell, or who became George McKell, who's the actor, or not. Because
George McKell.
He gave a link here to his IMDb account.
Yeah.
And this is and he's still alive, George McKell, Eddie McKell.
Yeah.
He's 90, I think, ish.
Yep.
And he was in things like Guns of Navarone.
Yeah.
And we got an email from him.
And he was in one of the James Bonds.
Was he one of those as well?
Yeah.
Which one? Do you know?
I did read it. He's been in loads of things.
New listener and currently catching up with the podcast. Excellent work. Much better than This American Life. But as an American, we're required to donate to that one. Is that true? No, it can't be. Wondering if I'm the only one with what seems to be an issue with the Micro Four Third cameras. I have used both Olympus and Panasonic, own the current love interest of Olympus, Pen F, and various models of the Panasonic lineage. No matter the model, lens type and current astrological sign, he writes very well, actually.
Brilliant. I love this email. Yeah.
My pictures with the Micro Four Third cameras are bland, without life, hard to look at without causing some type of eye issue. The focus is wrong, the light's wrong, the corners are soft and fuzzy. I take portraits of my children, they all look like Shar-Peis, which I had to look up, actually. I wasn't sure. A Shar-Pei is that wrinkly puppy, the really wrinkly puppy. As opposed to someone in this street trying to say the word Sharpie, Shar-Pei.
Oh, okay,
That's
yeah.
what Shar-Pei
I didn't
is.
quite understand that either, yeah.
It's a wrinkly puppy dog thing. The ones that have the big folds of wrinkles. And,
yeah. A bit like me.
A bit like you. But let me switch to even my cheapest Fuji, say my XF1, and I turn into Ansel Adams, or at least a close relative. Eyes are sharp with a hint of light dancing in them, leaves dance with colours. If I step out with my XT30, I have people following me home to look at my portfolio.
Brilliant.
I'm not a pro, not even a casual amateur, but my pictures are good enough that most family members will offer me a fruit cake for a copy. I return the cake the next year. I sound biased, but don't mean to be. I don't have an uncle who owns stock in the company or anything, though my godfather, Mr. Bezos, I mean, this could be true, offered me a free ride on the first untested ship to the moon. Your thoughts, suggestions, and off-the-wall comments welcome. Eddie or George McKell. Who, yeah.
Brilliant.
That
Absolutely
if there was
brilliant.
a letter of the week,
Yeah, that's it.
that would be it.
And you have to look up, you have to type his name into Google and see all of the old pictures, because obviously now he's a graciously aged gentleman.
Yeah.
But the pictures on the internet are amazing, because he's about 22 in those, and you'll recognise him.
Well, with
for
a stage
sure.
name George McKell, I looked at him, I thought, I want to see a few Guns of Navarone scenes that he was in. All I could find was Careless Whisper and Wake Me Up Before You Go. Obviously, YouTube thought I couldn't spell the last, which is Mikell. Or which is pronounced kill. Sorry, kill, isn't it?
McKill. So what's the answer?
I'm not sure there's an answer to that, really. I just thought it was such a wonderful.
It is a wonderful
mail.
email, but I think there's a little bit of an answer in that the whole Micro Four Thirds versus APS-C versus full frame versus medium format kind of conversation. So Micro Four Thirds obviously doesn't have quite, it's a smaller sensor, by inference doesn't have the same kind of depth of field, if you like, as APS-C, and APS-C doesn't have the same depth of field as full frame, and full frame doesn't have, well, actually it does have technically the same, but it's the way it kind of renders. But so maybe it's just that, maybe it's just the fact that it's just depends what you're trying to look for, and doesn't have the same oomph. But there are plenty of Giles uses Micro Four Thirds, doesn't he? I think, or did for a while. Didn't he use a Pen F?
I'm not sure. He doesn't now.
No, but there are plenty of people.
Sony user now.
Plenty of people who do use Micro Four Thirds. Damien McGillicuddy, for example, was using it for a long time and produced,
Wasn't he an ambassador for them?
Great images. I think he was an ambassador for Olympus. Yeah. I presume it's down to what you're looking for, and if you're looking for that extra kind of depth, bokeh, blurriness, then it might be just that simple as that. But what a lovely email! Absolutely wonderful.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
Right, your question.
Okay, I have a question from Jason Renault, and he says, it doesn't say where he's from, but he says, "Hi guys, thanks for the fun and great content. You are granting us. I grant you happiness."
Yes, from above.
I'm new to photography a little over a year ago, and still find the discussion of RAW versus JPEG, let's just say, interesting. I understand some professionals prefer to use RAW and spend time on the computer with editing, although once a preset is created, it is a question of applying the preset to a bunch of photographs. Now, I just watched Kevin's review of the X Pro 3, and one question came to mind. So the question is mostly addressed to me, i.e. Kevin, but curious to have both your inputs. If now the X Pro 3 will be in your bag, backed up by a second X Pro 3 for your wedding assignments, will you be using, or are you already using, the Fujifilm film simulations for this type of work, or are you shooting in RAW format? Jason,
you shoot RAW mainly now, don't you?
I shoot both, basically, yeah.
But you tend to process the RAW for your wedding work?
I tend to now, because a lot of my clients go for the RAW plus colour options. So it's easier for me to do that. However, I still shoot a JPEG to the other card. I still, up until I think yesterday when Adobe released Lightroom 9, the X Pro 3 wasn't supported RAW file-wise anyway, so I've only been shooting JPEG. I have to say that classic NEG film simulation, the superior emulation.
You love it, don't you?
It's adorable, absolutely adorable. I got stuck in a lift yesterday in Covent Garden.
And this is a very funny story.
And I thought, well, this is great. So what happened was I had...
Well, it wasn't so great to start with because you fell 15 feet.
It was very funny. Afterwards it was very funny. So I had a friend over from America. I was doing some shooting with her. And I said, right, let's go. We'd been over to the Houses of Parliament, and sorry, Jason, we'll get back to your question, by the way. And I said, right, we'll go to Covent Garden next. So we jumped on the tube, and I said to her, now Covent Garden is one of those stations where you can choose to go up the spirally staircase, but it's a long way, or you can take the 600-year-old elevators. And I said, you okay in elevator? She said, yeah, I'm fine. I get a little bit claustrophobic, but as long as it's quick, it's fine. No problem, I said. So we go into the elevator. And if you know these elevators in London, in the tube stations, Covent Garden, Hampstead, for example, Hampstead is the deepest one. You walk in one side and you walk out the other side, right? Yeah. So we walked in to the elevator, and the opposite side, the one where we should be exiting when we got to the top, opened and closed really quickly twice. Yeah. And I jokingly said, this elevator's broke. This will be turned off and we'll have to get out and go and queue up again. Yeah. Anyway, the doors behind us shut, so that was fine. We went up pretty quick. And then we went down
pretty quick.
It stopped. Everybody's body went up a little bit, and then it went down pretty rapid. Did it move your tummy? Did you feel it? Yeah. Everybody went and everybody in the elevator grabbed onto something else, and then it dropped, but it dropped very, very quickly. And to me it felt like it dropped, I don't know, like a foot or something like that. And then immediately above the door, the alarm went off, and then immediately above the door, with the little red.
It's not going to make you feel better by an alarm going off.
The little red scrolling thing above the door that says, exit this side, immediately said, "This elevator is out of service. Please do not use it." And I was like, this reminds me of when you're on the motorway, and you sat there and you're in back-to-back traffic, you're going 1 mile an hour, and the road sign comes up and says, "Do not go faster than 40 miles an hour." And you just think you're just having a laugh now. And then after about 10 minutes or so, the little fella came through the speaker, and he said,
"Did you know he was little?"
Well, I know he's little because he came out of a little hole in the end.
Right.
And he goes, he said, "How many of you are there?" And the guy nearest to the speaker said, 30. Ooh. And the bloke goes, 13? Oh, that's not enough to rescue. Joking. And then there's this woman who was in the elevator as well, who was in the back corner, and she was probably the most freaked out by all of it. Yeah. She went, no, tell him 40 because he'll understand it's more. And the guy goes, it was very, very efficient, I have to say. He said, "Don't worry." He said, "We'll be there soon." He said, "You're stuck between floors, so we can't really we can't move you up or down." He said, just relax and we'll be there.
Did they winch you up in the end then?
No. So the guy who stood next to me, he said, "What are the lottery numbers, by the way?" I was like, "What are you on about?" He said, "Well, you said this was going to break down." Yeah. And then after about a couple more minutes, just like Mr. Ben, there's a secret door in these elevators. Right. I was looking at the little hatch in the roof. There's like an attic roof. I was looking at it thinking, no way. There's no way I'm going to heave
I'm not going through.
No, please, no.
No way. Anyway, you just like this door opened in the middle of the wall.
What?
And he appeared, he put his head through, went, "Hello, everybody." Really, really cheery. He said, "Sorry about this." And then he explained what was happening. So all 4 elevators run up and down next to each other. Right. Okay. And so they shut the entire station. They pulled up one of the other elevators level with ours. And he said,
so you get into another elevator?
Yeah, he said,
"That's clever."
He said, we are quite high. He said, "I'm not going to tell you exactly how high, but don't look down when you step over."
Okay.
And I thought literally it would be like a couple of inches gap or something. Yeah. But no, they brought a bridge, a little steel bridge for us to walk across into the next elevator.
Did you look down?
No, it was actually, it was actually pitch black anyway. I'm thinking, wouldn't have seen much. But
you should have been there with your flashlight. Look, guys, look all the way down there.
He did tell me off filming on my phone, though.
Did he?
First thing he said when he came through, he said, "Hello, everybody." Pointed at me. He said, "Turn your phone off."
Did he?
So that was quite an experience, actually, I have to say.
You don't have to turn your phone off, do you?
I don't know.
Are you on private property?
Yeah, but he was about to save my life, so I thought, I'll let him get away with that. Anyway, I was thinking about if we were stuck in that elevator for hours on end. I was thinking this is going to be a great photo story. We could like just chat and take pictures of people and everything. And I started taking a couple of snaps, and the film simulation, the Superior film simulation, it just looked great in there. The light was great. The people, some of them looking panicked, some of them looking bored. The one guy said to me, he said, I've been coming up and down this lift for the last 30 years and this has never happened. But anyway, it was all ruined by the man that saved our lives, because he turned up too early for me to really think too hard about it.
So you didn't manage to get your photo story?
No.
Do you think the lady that was panicking would have loved to have been part of a Mullins photo shoot?
It was quite surreal, I have to say. And when we got into the second elevator, there was a little step ladder. Yeah. And I said to the other guy, and I said, "What's the
It's the for the little man that rescued you.
What's the step ladder for?" And he said, "Well, at there's only one part of the lift shaft where we can't get the escape doors next to each other. So in that case, you have to climb down or up." This little ladder, and I was thinking, I'm really glad that we weren't at that part. Yeah.
Oh, you could handle that. Yeah. No worries at all.
And then they took us down. We went down in the elevator. We got to the bottom, and they said, "Right, you could go." And we were like, "What? No, we were going up." When we got in, we were going up, and he went, "Oh, I thought you were going down." So then we had to go back up again, and I was like, I think I might just take the steps.
Did you walk?
No, I didn't. No. But I was like,
that's a long walk.
I was like, this is putting us through hell here.
Meanwhile, back to the question.
Yeah, sorry, Jason. But yeah, no, that was it. The film simulation. Yeah, the JPEGs. Honestly, this whole thing about RAW and JPEG and professional. It's interesting that he said, I understand some professionals prefer to use RAW. You don't have to be a professional to use RAW, and you don't have to be a non-professional to just use JPEG.
No, the first 2/3 of my wedding career in 15 years was spent photographing using JPEGs.
I shot when I had my Canon 1D Mark IV, which was like £5,500 worth of camera. I shot in JPEG on that.
A lot of my favourite images were JPEGs.
Yeah. I think it's a bit of a misnomer. People who you get more latitude with RAW, of course, but if you're happy with
the
what
latitude out of a JPEG is not bad,
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good. So thank you, Jason. Sorry to intervene with my story.
Thank you for your question. Right, have we got time for one more? No. Oh, the clock's against us. Johan Axelsson, I'm going to hold on to this as the first question next week, which is all to do, again, with the X Pro 3. So I promise, Johan, your question will be the first one on the show next week. There we are. There's a promise. Right, thank you very much for your time this week, and thank you to our guest, Giles Penfound. If you like this week's show, please take a moment and share it. We'll consider you legendary material if you do that. Apple Podcast reviews are great too, and we do read every single one of them, I promise. And have you joined we mentioned it at the start, the private Facebook group? If not, we're waiting there to say hello to you. Thank you for your questions. They are the lifeblood of the show.
Boom, boom.
Keep sending them in. Click at fujicast.co.uk. Music is from Blue Wednesday with additional stuff from Artlist. Right, payoffs this week. You get Eric.
Kevin's Instagram is Kevin Mullins Photography. See his films on YouTube at Documentary Eye. His website is kevinmullinsphotography.co.uk. For street workshops, training, and everything Fujifilm, go to f16.click. I'm Eric Delorme from Ottawa. My Instagram is _Eric Delorme, and my website is ericdelorme.ca. Thanks for listening.
And mine's this is quite apposite because mine is coming from Murray McMillan, who's going to be a guest on the show in a couple of weeks' time.
Neil's Instagram is Neil James. His website is neiljames.com for pictures and one-to-one mentoring. Remember, you can hear his other photography podcast, which is called Breathe Pictures, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Murray McMillan. My Instagram is Murray_McMillan, and my website is murraymcmillan.com. macmillanphotography.com. Thanks very much.
If your question, your comment, or just plain amusing observation didn't feature this week, don't fear, it will. Like all the best things in life, your question is one of them, and we will get round to them. And we're looking forward to seeing you, well, some of you, this week, of course.
You said apposite twice this week.
Did I?
Yeah, I don't really know what it means either.
It's apt.
Oh.
It's a posher way of saying it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you on Wednesday.
Yes, I am. Yes, we are.
Are you going to invest in a few more smiles this year?
No.
No. Oh, well, at least you know where you stand.
And I'm not saying goodbye this week either.
The FujiCast is an independent Loading Zone production. Email the show with your questions and words of wisdom to click@fujicast.co.uk. Email any complaints and political nonsense to our wives, who will deal with your comments in their own good time and in their own good way.